bringing sports, entertainment, and technology podcasts together. This is SPNT.
You're listening to the Redleg Weekly Podcast. Audio bandwidth for the Redleg Weekly Podcast is provided by Stitcher.com. Download the Stitcher Smart Radio app today at Stitcher.com/SPNT. What's happening, Reds fans? Soup's here for Redleg Weekly after a week off. Reds are 2-0 in the postseason. 2 wins down, 9 more to go as they're well on their way. Well, maybe not well on their way, but they're certainly on the right foot, off to the right start here in the 2012 postseason. I'm Nick Suberling, joined alongside my tag team partner, Dave Brem. How you doing, Dave?
Pretty good. How can I be anything but great? Up 2-0 in the first round of the playoffs. Couldn't ask for anything else.
Absolutely. You know, when we saw the matchup going into the postseason, we saw they were going to be heading out to San Francisco. I know a lot of people were very concerned with the Reds' offense, but talk about an explosion. 9 runs in Game 2. Did not see that coming.
No, especially in that park. I mean, that's not – I mean, if you saw that Great American, you'd be like, oh, all right, that's Great American. But to have that happen out in San Francisco is great, especially after the kind of struggles we had toward the end of the season. So, and our pitching was obviously, even with the trouble we had, pitched fantastic for us. So it's great to have 2 games, a 2-game lead already, and play the next 3 at home. I mean, that's fantastic.
Well, we have a ton to talk about this week, and we're joined by a very special guest. He's the host of the Redlegs Radio Report in Bowling Green, Kentucky. They're on ESPN 1450. You know him as Jason Harbison. Jason, hey, thanks again for joining us here on Redleg Weekly.
Nick, David, how you guys doing?
We're doing well. Tell everybody out there about the Redlegs Radio Report. I know Dave and I have had the luxury, I believe, the past 2 nights, both of us, being on your show via guest. Tell everybody out there about Redlegs Radio Report.
Well, we're lucky enough to be, I guess, the southernmost affiliate of the Cincinnati Reds. And like you said, our show's called the Redlegs Radio Report. We're on every Saturday morning from 9 to 10 a.m., and you can hear us basically online, which is ESPN1450.net. We just talk Reds baseball, of course, and we have guests from time to time, and of course we had you guys on past couple of nights. And as the Reds continue into the playoffs, we're also doing countdown shows. It's like the last 2 nights, of course, we did countdown shows leading right up into the main feed from 700 WLW. So it's been a great experience for us this year.
Now, you guys have had a ton of fantastic guests on the program all summer long. If I had to say my favorite that I've heard was probably you interviewed Jim Kelch right around the time when Marty shaved his head. That to me was one of my favorite interviews because he just kept ripping on Marty.
Well, yeah, the entire time. That's one thing. I'm glad you brought it up instead of me bringing it up later. But yeah, we always try to do kind of a tongue-in-cheek kind of thing, and we're not really stats guys per se. That we'll get too hung up on a lot of stats and talk too much about numbers. I mean, we will get into a little bit of detail, but we're not one of those big stat junkie that'll go deep into the numbers. We like to have a lot of fun, and basically we treat it, myself and the 2 guys, Darren and Tim and I that do the show, we treat it as it's no different if we're just kind of sitting around talking, say at a bar or something, watching the game. And that's one thing we've always tried to stay true to, and we especially did that with Jim because it was around this. We've had him on the show maybe 3 or 4 times, and the last time we had him on was when, like you said, Nick, was when right after Marty had his head shaved, and of course we started asking him when he was going to shave his head, and then of course we immediately went into Corey Hart's from the Bowling Green area who plays for the Brewers. So we immediately went into plug mode, and we said, Jim, the next time you're talking about Corey Hart and they play the Brewers, please bring us up, so we're just, shameless in our plugs.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, we do the same thing. It's all about word of mouth. Hey, I certainly understand. Don't worry about that. We got plenty of time to plug the show. And hey, again, thank you for joining us here on the podcast and for putting up with the video portion, which you could also find at our website, redlegfans.com. Hey, don't forget, you can email us, podcast@redlegfans.com, and give us a follow on Twitter. We are at Redleg Weekly. So we have a lot to get to. Now, obviously, we haven't been around. We missed last week, so we didn't get to touch on the Homer Bailey no-hitter. So we'll get to it briefly, although it deserves way more talk than we're going to give it tonight. But we are in the postseason. The Reds now up 2-0 against the Giants. But, Dave, when you watched the game, I hope, first of all, that you did get to see the game that Bailey threw a no-hitter. Please tell me you did.
I listened to it. I made the mistake of I was listening to that game on the radio, and once it got to like the 7th inning, there was no way I was turning it. I'm a little too superstitious for things I'm very aware I have no control over. But there was no way I was changing my mode of consuming that game. So I listened to it on the radio, and as soon as it was over on the radio, I turned on the TV and watched like the post-game celebration. But that was fantastic. And if you would at the beginning of the year told me to guess which one of our pitchers had a no-hitter, he would have been my 5th guess. So it was great to see and good for that guy. And it just shows you when he can hit his spots, Homer Bailey's got the stuff to get the job done.
What about you, Jason? Did you get a chance to watch it live, and what were your thoughts on the no-hitter?
I'm going to go ahead and preface this by saying that I watch about 98% of every inning through. That night I had some other stuff going on. I was a little bit of insight into my life. I ref inline hockey here just in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and we had a couple rainouts that we don't normally play on Friday nights. We had a couple rainouts earlier in the week, so I had to go and kind of fill in, and I was doing kind of my civic duty, doing that, filling in for some guys that missed because of the rainout. So short story long, I missed the game. I started watching it at the very beginning, and I'm like, what are the odds at Homer Bailey? So then all of a sudden I get back to my car. My phone basically exploded with all the text messages that I got, and I get back. I rush home, and of course I'm watching everything on SportsCenter, and I just was kicking myself the entire time that I missed it.
But you know what? Hey, we all have that story because mine isn't that far off. Now, that night I was out to dinner with my good friend Andy Barch, who's visiting me from Cleveland. And, you know, the game was on in the background, and I didn't think anything of it. And I had noticed that Bailey had been pitching well. And the score, I think it was just 1-0. And so, you know, we went back to my house. We were visiting with my wife and my kids, and Andy was my best friend in college. He was my best man at my wedding. So we hadn't seen each other in a while. We were just kind of talking. And all of a sudden I get a text message from my wife's uncle. Now, that's odd in itself, but that he said, "Are you watching this Reds game?" And I knew they were playing the Pirates, and I'm thinking, did they, like, blow a lead or something? Like, it didn't even cross my mind. Then all of a sudden it clicked. I went, Homer Bailey's throwing a no-hitter. I pull up the MLB at bat app on my phone, and sure enough, I look, and there's only one out in the 9th inning. And I book it downstairs to my TV. I turn it on. Now, the first thing my friend yelled, "Don't do it. You're going to jinx it." And I didn't care. I went downstairs. I turned it on. I got lucky. I really, you know, unfortunately, I didn't get to see all of the game, but let's face it, I saw the most important part. So it was pretty cool. And, you know, just the fact that you're right, Dave, out of the 5 starting pitchers, I would probably say he would be my 4th guess as far as the no-hitters go. But you're right. Out of the starting rotation that we have, Dave, I was kind of stunned that Homer Bailey did it.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at pure how they've been pitching this year, if Cueto would have done it, it would have been cool, but it was Cueto. Even if Latos would have done it at this point in the season, it would have been like, oh, yeah, he's been pitching well. But for Homer, I mean, like I said, it's just you knew he had the stuff. It's just when he can hit his spots. So I'm happy for him. He came in so highly touted and hasn't really absolutely lived up to what they thought he could be, but that was great to see, and I'm glad he's getting on track.
So, Jason, let's segue here a little bit because we've been talking about Bailey's no-hitter. And, by the way, he's the starting pitcher for Game 3 tomorrow night at Great American Ballpark for the Cincinnati Reds. Are you surprised that the Reds are up 2-0 in this series? You know, historically, they do not do well on the West Coast, and now here they are. Really, they have dominated the series to this point.
You know, it's funny you say that, Nick, that I would have said as the true Reds fan to me, of course, I would have loved for them to be up 2-0 coming back to Great American Ballpark. But I think the realist in me, I would have been happy, and I think a lot of people would have been happy with a 1-1, you know, win one, lose one out on the West Coast. I think a lot of people would have been happy with that. But I'm ecstatic as much as I'm sure you guys are. I never thought in a million years that they'd come back, especially the way they dominated last night. And you know, like David said, I never thought that Homer Bailey had it in him to pitch a no-hitter last Friday night. It was just amazing, and I'd like to think that this is going to keep going. I don't know. The realist in me would say otherwise, but I don't think you can argue last night with what we saw with Bronson Arroyo. I mean, that was amazing to me. To me, that was as amazing as Homer's no-hitter. Just from a Reds fan standpoint, take out the fact that the three of us obviously talk Reds for somewhat, I wouldn't say a living, but we do it for fun. But I don't think at the beginning of the season, if anybody told us any of these things were to play out this late in the season, I don't think anybody believes us.
And you and I, Jason, we kind of talked about this last night on your radio program, the genius that is Dusty Baker going with Arroyo in Game 2 because of that ballpark. And sure enough, there were some hard-hit balls out there that probably would have left the yard at Great American Ballpark that, in that great big outfield that is AT&T Ballpark, guys like Drew Stubbs and Jay Bruce are going to make those catches.
Yeah, we fielded a bunch of calls too, actually, people complaining about that very thing. Like, how the heck can you put Arroyo out there? He's just, there's no way he's going to do it on the West Coast. I mean, between that and fielding calls about, I can't believe that, Valdez or Cairo are on the postseason roster, I think was the other thing that we fielded. A lot of those didn't make it to the air. We just, our phone screener kind of nixed those, phone screener Todd nixed those before we ever put them on the air. But yeah, I mean, I'm just thoroughly impressed, and I hope that they can kind of keep this momentum going forward.
Dave, what are your thoughts about AT&T Ballpark and Arroyo?
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed. Obviously, it was a great game, and I'm man enough to admit I probably would have went Latos and Bailey out on the West Coast just because the way Latos pitched, which obviously we got to see him anyways, and he came up big for us. But I was wrong. Homer pitched fantastic out there, and now we get to see Bailey pitch Game 3, possibly the clincher at home, and hopefully brings a little bit of that magic from last Friday. And I was amazed with what Arroyo did, though. And like you said, I would say at least a couple of those hard-hit balls were definitely out of Great American. So it worked. Dusty's smarter than I am, and he realized that maybe Arroyo needs the help of that big park at times.
But, there were times, too, that a lot of those balls weren't even leaving the infield. I seem to remember Hunter Pence, chopping 3 balls to Scott Rowland almost every at bat, it seems. And kudos to Dusty. And we've talked about this before as well, Dave, that pitching and defense is what is your winning equation in the postseason. And that's why you see a lot of people that they love Todd Frazier, but you want a guy like Scott Rowland who's going to pick it down at third base. You don't have to worry about him. And so far, now let's knock on wood, the defense has played fantastic for the Reds, Dave.
Yeah, for sure. And you can't argue that right now Scott Rowland in the field, while he might be a slight downgrade at the plate from Frazier, probably is, what he gives you in the field is just like playing Stubbs in center field out in San Francisco over Heisey. Yeah, normally he's not as good of a batter. He seemed to hit pretty well in the first 2 games, but, I mean, with that outfield, you got to worry about defense. Defense is a big part of the game. It's not all about the plate. So I completely understand why Roland's playing. Roland's going to play every game more than likely, and that just makes good sense. So I'm glad Todd Frazier's on the bench and he's ready to go if we need him, but I don't see how you could argue for not starting Scott Rowland right now.
Jason, I know, and like you said before, you get the phone calls. You got your Frazier lovers out there, but it's tough to argue with what's going on right now.
Mm-hmm. Well, this wouldn't have anything to do with I asked you the same question on my show last night. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said about that. I think probably the three of us would argue, too, before this series started, that how can you keep Frazier out of the lineup? There's no way that this guy, the way he's been hitting, the way he's been having this phenomenal rookie season, how do you keep him out of the lineup? Well, last night he came in to pinch hit and kind of came in for defensive reasons later in the game. But, again, it goes back to the in Dusty we trusty kind of thing. A lot of people... And again, we've had calls about this, just people complaining about the lineup. And I think you guys have had Jamie Ramsey on your show a time or two. And we've had him on our show as well. And he's of course, the assistant PR director for the Reds. And a lot of the things that he says, I think is maybe him towing the company line. But one thing he has always said every time he's come on our show, and I'm sure your guys' show as well, is that you got to basically kind of trust in Dusty. The players believe in him. That you've heard time and time again how he is a player's manager, and he knows what he's doing. And every time you second guess him, there's always a reason for what he did. He has at least 3 or 4 reasons for every move that he makes. Whereas the casual fan at arm's length, like us, sometimes will say, "I mean, I can't believe that he's doing this, or this."
And speaking of trusting Dusty, he was forced right off the bat to have to make a crucial decision in this series, guys, and that was, what do you do after your ace, your number one guy, goes out after 8 pitches? Now, he could have easily brought Latos in off the bench to fill in right away, but the genius in Dusty, he brings in a guy like Sam LeCure, who's done a fantastic job all season long, and he spells the Reds pitching staff for about 2 innings, which I think is ultimately going to save Latos for late. Now, there's a good chance we may not need Latos the rest of this series, but if there was going to be a Game 5, at least you saved Latos, and you didn't use him up early in the series, Dave.
Yeah, and that's another thing is I'll admit, I questioned the choice to bring Latos in at all. I thought our pen could have handled going throughout the whole game, and he did it perfectly like you said. He didn't bring Latos in right away. He had LeCure pitch a couple, so Latos had his time to get ready and get his normal warm-up. They said he had about as much time as he usually takes before a start. And he pitched 4 great innings. And if Cueto's not ready to go, he's going to be ready to go on Wednesday more than likely. So you can't argue with what happened. He made the right choice. It worked out fantastic. We're up 2-0 in the series. And it's another one of those. It's not the decision I probably would have made, but that's why he's making millions of dollars to coach a baseball team. And I'm sitting in my office talking about the team.
Jason, he brings up a good point, and and this is something that we've talked about all season with the Reds and the treatment of Dusty, but it's going to be hard to argue not bringing him back next year. Would you not agree?
Oh yeah, I definitely agree, and I think Walt Jocketty went as far as saying last week that we want him back. He needs to be here. I just think it's just a matter of crossing all the T's, dotting all the I's, and I'm hoping and praying that he is actually going to be back next year. And I think it would be a big mistake, and you don't want to happen what happened in San Francisco to him a couple years ago. Is basically, for all intents and purposes, a technicality. It was the reason why he didn't come back.
And you've seen it too. And we, every time that the Reds go to San Francisco to play them, he gets huge ovations out there. They love him in San Francisco. Now, you can't say the same thing in Chicago, but, in San Francisco, they had a lot of success. He took them to a World Series in 2002. Can't believe that was 10 years ago, by the way. And now here he is again with the Reds with a fantastic shot. I mean, the National League is wide open, guys. I don't know if you've had a chance to see any of the other games. Right now, the Cardinals National Series is split 1-1. But even over in the American League, there's still a lot of questions to be asked about what team is the most dominant. But here you look at what the Reds have done. The first 2 games, you couldn't argue that they have been the best team so far in the postseason. Granted, it's 2 games. I know it's early, but the first 2 games, they've been fantastic.
Yeah, and you can't blame him for the Cubs not liking him. The Cubs don't
Right.
like anybody. They're just angry people. So, but like you said, yeah, he even in San Francisco where he left and he's doing good things with other teams, they still love him, and that's a sign. I mean, you look at most managers or most players that leave a team and then come back on the visiting team, they don't get applauded. That just doesn't happen. So, and like you said, I think it's going to come down to Dusty. I think if he coaches at all, he's going to be with the Reds. But I could almost see if they, I'm not gonna say they are. If they happen to win the World Series, I think he could just decide, especially with his health issues, hey, let's go out on top and just be done. And you know what? That'd be great to see. I mean, I'd like to have him back, obviously, but if he needs to for health reasons and that's how he wants to go out, I could see. But it's not going to come down to the Reds not wanting him or being willing to pay him. They're going to do everything in their power to get him to come back.
All right, so let's take a look. We'll look at Game 3 here. The Reds making the trip back to Cincinnati Tuesday night, or Tuesday afternoon, I should say, as they take on the Giants. Homer Bailey is your starter, going up against Ryan Vogelsong, I believe, for the Giants. Last time I checked, that's what the two starters were listed as. If we had to make a prediction, Jason, let's start with you. If you had to make a prediction for Tuesday night, what are you looking at?
Well, I like the fact that you're going to me first there, Nick, because you guys both, as you know, came on our show the last 2 nights and basically made these predictions that came true. So there's a lot that I've got to live up to on this. And I think Tim even called you, was it Nicodemus or something like that? Yeah, he called you that. So so seriously, no pressure on me on this one. I don't think Bailey's going to go out there and pitch another no-hitter, obviously. Of course, because he did that in Pittsburgh for one, and he's pitching in Great American Small Park, as he calls it, and other people call it that as well. But I look for him to have a good game. He's probably going to give up a couple runs. I don't think it's going to be a low-scoring game by any sense of the imagination. I'd have to look up the numbers, but I think San Francisco, last couple of times they've been in, they've kind of knocked the ball around there. I know that classically a lot of the teams on the West Coast love, of course, coming into Great American Ballpark. We can go on and on about how small it is. But I look for him to have a good game. I think Bruce continues on his. I'm going to just piggyback right on what you guys said the other night on our show that Bruce is going to continue on. Of course, you guys called it before he did anything, so that makes it more a better statement than mine, just piggybacking off of what you guys said. But I look for Votto to maybe come out of a slump, and I'll go ahead and predict this, that he's going to get a home run tomorrow night.
That's a good prediction. I agree completely. He's due. And if anything, that's a ballpark he can do it at because and you saw it over the first 2 games of the series. All of his hits are to the left side of the infield. He may have pulled one single last night to the right side, but everything else has been away, and that's Dave. I mean, hey, that's right in his wheelhouse anyway.
Yeah, and that's the thing is everybody's worried about Votto's power, but that'll come back, and even if it doesn't come back till next year, that's not the biggest part of his game. That snag at first that he made to make that double play, those line drive singles, taking walks, having good at bats, long at bats, that's what we need from Votto. And yeah, if the power comes along, and I'd be all for him hitting a home run, obviously. But if the power comes along, it comes along. But right now, you called it a slump. He's hitting 429 in those 2 games, so I'll take that slump. And like you said, his power's not there, but that's one facet of his game, and we got Bruce to make up for that.
Were you going to say something, Jason?
No, I was just going to basically. David said a lot better than I could have said it though. But I think kind of back to the Frazier issue, I think he's going to get some more playing time because you have to wonder if maybe even if Roland does start the game, if he comes in later in the game to kind of get some rest. Because I mean, I was looking at the schedule earlier today. I think you guys correct me if I'm wrong. That if the Reds actually went out tomorrow and sweep, they wouldn't play their first game until Sunday. So they could pretty much reset the rotation if they wanted to, and get Cueto even, healthier if he is able to come back at all.
That's a good point. I mean, really, if you think about it, that could be a game changer as far as the future of the postseason goes for Reds. If the sooner you can get it over with, the sooner you can answer some of those questions that you have. If you can rest Cueto, that would be best case scenario for the Reds. You don't want to throw them out there because there's so much uncertainty, especially pitching in a cold weather stadium, cold atmosphere. You don't know what's going to happen to your back, and trust me, I've had those. They hurt. They're bad. You can't move, and you could tell that Johnny was not feeling very well the other night. So I'm assuming we're both predicting a sweep tomorrow night.
I'm going to go ahead and say yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we'll make it a perfect trifecta here. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So make sure you email us at podcast@redlegfans.com and send us your tweets. We're at Redleg Weekly. We're about halfway through episode 28 of Redleg Weekly. Just a reminder, you can download the show on iTunes. Give us a shout there. Give us some feedback. Leave us a review. Just do a keyword search for Redleg Weekly in the iTunes store. Don't forget the Podcast Awards. That's right. They've started up for 2012. Unfortunately, Redleg Weekly is not eligible because we started production this calendar year, but it doesn't mean you can't nominate our sister podcast, Who Day Weekly. So please nominate our podcast at podcastawards.com. We'd love your support. And if you just get a chance or if you have any questions about the nomination process, just email me, nick@spnt.tv. You can give me a follow. I'm at Redleg Weekly on Twitter. You can follow Dave. He's at Mr. Redlegs21. And you can also follow our guest, Jason Harbison of the Redlegs Radio Report in Bowling Green, Kentucky. You can follow him at Redlegs Radio Rep. They always say they run out of room.
Yeah.
So there you go.
we ran out of letters, so we had to just go with rep.
So make sure you give Jason a follow. They do some great things. Apparently, I won a T-shirt over the weekend for a tweet that I forgot that I sent, and I went back. I listened to your show. You're right. It was a very funny tweet. That's the first time anybody has ever said I was funny. So thank you, Jason.
Well, yeah, we give away. We're lucky enough to have a sponsor on our show that's Homage, which is actually out of Columbus there, sort of kind of close to you guys. And they kind of specialize in, I guess, kind of nostalgic tees. And they've got all kinds of like Ohio State, and they actually have some Bowling Green things, a lot of college, UD, different things like that. But they also have some great Reds T-shirts. They've got like a Chris Sabo and a bunch of Johnny Bench T-shirts, Pete Rose, and we give away one every show. We usually give that out to like what we think is one of our best tweets that somebody sends to us. And I forget what exactly you sent, Nick, but something about. Was it Fox Sports Ohio showing Cruise In? Was that it?
Yeah. Well, and we'll preface it by you had tweeted about, I think they were playing the Cardinals, and somebody had left a microphone up, and every time somebody got thrown out at first base, you could hear them drop an S-bomb, and it was plain as day. And so you tweeted about it, and I responded with, "You're talking about the same folks who aired Cruisin' for 2 hours instead of Champagne." So there you go.
Yeah, I do remember that now. That was actually weird, and I'm going to go ahead and brag a little bit here because that's really what our show is all about. Is we're just a couple guys that are lucky enough to kind of fall backwards into this Reds affiliation. We were actually at the clinching game. Those are my one of my co-hosts, Darren Doyle, and I. We're lucky enough to go up there, and part of being part of a Reds affiliation is you can put in for credentials. And I know, Nick, you've gone a couple Mud Hens games and some minor leagues games and covered those in the past. Is that correct?
Yeah, I went to the series that the Mud Hens hosted the Louisville Bats, so I had a chance to – and Dave was there too. We sat there with Matt Andrews, the voice of the Bats.
Yeah, Matt's a great guy. We met him. We went up to Louisville because they're about 2 hours away from us down here in Bowling Green. But anyway, to go to that, it's somewhat tough. You just send a couple emails and have to kind of get your credentials to go to the minor leagues. But the major leagues is a whole different ball of wax, and we've been kind of putting it off all season long, really working our way through the minors, if you will, because the Dayton Dragons, of course, is the Class A affiliate of the Reds. They come down here and play the Bowling Green Hot Rods about 15 times a year. So we really kind of got our feet wet, so to speak, there, and had worked our way up through AAA as well, almost like we were playing baseball. And we said, well, let's just pick a random date and we'll go up, and we'll finally go up and go to Great American Ballpark and do this. Well, Darren and I, when you fill it out for these credentials, you basically have to do it. You can't do it more than a week in advance, and there's like this whole online thing, and you got to basically give away your firstborn to do it, and have all these affiliation numbers and stuff that we had to get from some of our bosses that we weren't even aware of. And we filled it out and just kind of crossed our fingers. Didn't think in a million years. Well, it ended up, it was the Saturday, I guess September 22nd, which ended up being the clinching day. And I mean, it was one of those, like the skies opened up and the stars aligned, and it was just amazing. Of 162 games, although there's only half of those at home. What are the odds that a couple of idiots that have a Red show got to go experience that? So that was neat for us.
Now, I do remember you tweeting, I believe, the Friday night before that you were hoping the Reds would lose in extras, which they did.
Right.
But
We were the only two Reds fans at the time that were secretly crossing our fingers that they were going to somehow lose that game so we could go up there.
Yeah, I don't appreciate that. I was down there for that game.
Well, there was part of me that actually wanted them to win, because I'm like, well, if they do clinch when we're up there, and this being our first time, it'd be a lot more laid back. There wouldn't be as many people there. There'd just be kind of a skeleton crew up in the press box. You wouldn't have to worry too much about it, and we kind of go about our way. Nobody's gonna bother us or anything. But so there was that side of the coin that. But if I had a choice between that and the clinch, obviously I'm gonna go with the clinch night. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Did you get to go? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this. So that was Saturday afternoon. Did you get to go down in the clubhouse at all, or what were your limitations? Because I know with those credentials, sometimes they do give you that access, but
Yeah,
not sure.
it was really weird because we had been up there about kind of to rewind a little bit. We had been up there the week before because part of the Reds affiliation is every game they have what's called the Reds Radio Affiliate Suite, which they give to all of the affiliates, and they get like one game a year. So like let's say the Dayton, Ohio's Reds affiliate, they'll get that suite for a day, and you can take up there whoever you want to. So our whole show went up, and some of our bosses went up, and it was like I said, as far as when we went up there, we didn't know what to expect when we went up to actually cover a game, and we were just kind of again deer in the headlights. And Darren looked down at his press pass, and it says, "Well, this says no clubhouse access, but it does say field access on it." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to be the guy that goes down there and gets kicked out." So we went and asked somebody up there in the lobby of the press box area. And they're like, no, you guys go down here, go here, here, here. And then we actually went down into the kind of the belly of Great American Ballpark. And when we were down there, we, again, looked like a bunch of rubes just kind of looking around, not knowing where we're at. But then we started to remember some things that we had been on, the Great American Ballpark tour back in January when they had a Reds affiliate day there. And we ended up walking down this hallway where these ushers told us to go. And we just keep walking down, and then we noticed that to the left of us, there's the visiting team clubhouse, which was the Dodgers at the time, and then also the umpires' locker room as well. And then it said to field access. Well, we turned that corner, and all of a sudden, there's the big celebration on the field, and we're standing in the visitors' dugout on the field. So that was just a crazy moment. And of course, there are police all over and stuff. We didn't even know what to do, but our first thing was we're supposed to be here. Our passes say we've gotten this far, so we just went on the field.
That's awesome. Hey, that's yeah. And what are the odds too of all days of all of the the 81 home games they have? You just happen to get really lucky and get down there. So you didn't get to see any champagne, right?
No, actually we did. We the first thing we did is once we stepped out onto the field, we walked, of course, around the warning track there, and the first guy that greets us is Jamie Ramsey.
Of course.
And he comes up and he gives us one of those big like bro hugs, and he's covered in champagne. He's nuts. At this, let me reset. At this point, all of the players have come back out from the clubhouse, spraying each other onto the field. They're doing those on-field interviews. Mm-hmm. And Jamie's given both Darren and I these big hugs. He smells like champagne. And actually I've got it here. Let me get it. He handed me this cork.
Oh, nice.
It was from Brandon Phillips. It almost looked like a little drug deal going down. He kind of does this like little lean, and he's like, hey, Jason, he goes, here you go. And I was just, mesmerized by this thing. But we were there amongst all of the. Joey Votto actually opened up a beer and sprayed it on Darren. And it's about 3.5, close to 3 hours, I guess, back to Bowling Green, plus you gain and lose an hour. And we smelled like champagne the entire way home, but we didn't mind. It was about 1 a.m. that we got home, but it was one of the coolest things that we ever got to experience. We got a lot of pictures of it.
That's awesome. Nothing wrong with that. Oh, I'm so jealous.
How many people can say Joey Votto dumped a beer on him?
Right. Oh.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a story you tell the grandkids.
Yeah, I'll be telling my grandkids that. But we were there with Bronson Arroyo, all the guys that were there. It was weird. We were kind of standing off to the side, and when you mentioned the getting bumped by the cruise-in show, we actually were there, and we watched that replay. And I swear I rewound it 100 times and did the slow-mo on my DVR. And I was like, I was standing right next to that guy because they were showing all of the stuff. Darren and I were like, I was standing next to that girlfriend of Joey Votto, whoever it was. And I'm like, I know that's me. I think you see part of my coat there, And again, it's just us being kids, basically, is what it was. But it was just surreal and stupid all in the same time. But I mean, again, it's something I'm going to remember the rest of my life.
Hey, that is fantastic. Oh man, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of fun at Fifth Third Field for the Mud Hens series with Matt, and having a chance to record the podcast in the booth with him. But oh my goodness. That is night and day, hands down. The one of the coolest things that you could ever have happen to you in your lifetime. And wow, I'm extremely jealous. That's a really cool story.
Yeah, like I said, I'll be telling that story until the day I die. And Again, the one weird thing though that, and we brought this up on our show too, that was really weird about it is, and I'm sure you may have experienced a little bit of this at Fifth Third Field in Toledo, is when you're up there watching the game, you can't be a fan when you're in the press box. I mean, you're sitting there next to Hal McCoy, John Fay, and just all these writers. Buster Only was sitting 2 people down from us because, of course, it was the clinch. So a lot of the national media was there. And the first thing you want to do, I mean, Jay Bruce hit that monster home run to kind of open it up. First thing you want to do is just, stand up and cheer.
Right.
And it's like watching a game in a library. You can't, you got to keep your cool.
And it's amazing, too, at how well they do that, and I've noticed it, too. You're right. I don't know how Jamie Ramsey does it. I mean, for as big of a fan as he is, to not jump up and scream and cheer, that's awfully difficult.
Well, I know he's been doing it a while too, and I actually was talking to him there in the press box. I actually saw him coming back from the little cafeteria that was there. And Maggie Zanies, I don't know if you guys are familiar with her.
Absolutely.
She's the winner of the Breaking Barriers competition. She wrote an essay on that. She was actually sitting next to us too, and she's cut from the same mold that we are. She grew up a Reds fan, always been a Reds fan, and oh, by the way, she's also a reporter. And we were talking, and I'm like, man, how do you do this? I mean, day in, day out, like you said, Nick, how do you not just go nuts when you see a big walk-off home run, when you see a close play at the plate? How do you not just stand up and cheer and stuff? I guess it just becomes so ingrained in you that you've got a job to do. You've got to sit there and tweet. You've got to report this up in the press box that you can't really do that. Yeah,
it's a fine line. And I've seen, and I remember when I was a student at BGSU, there were some times where our student announcers got a little too boisterous and too excited, and it's amazing how quickly heads turn and look at you when you're not supposed to be cheering, and then it's tough, but it comes with practice, and the more and more you do it, you just know that okay, you can't do it. And I will say this: the one night I was at Fifth Third Field, the Bats had lost in extra innings and on a walk-off hit. I think it was either a walk-off hit or might have even been a walk-off walk, to be honest with you. But I remember everybody in the press box cheering, but they weren't cheering because they won the game. They were cheering because they got to go home. Because minor league baseball and extra innings, you're ready to go, and that's just how it is. They weren't cheering because they won. They were cheering because it was time to go.
Yeah, exactly. Maggie was actually telling us that one of the first times that she went up there with her mom, because of course she's still a minor and her mom's got to drive her everywhere. Her mom forgot that she was in the press box, and she just stood up and cheered and went nuts. And all of a sudden, Hal McCoy does one of those half turns kind of thing, lady, where you're. So it was funny hearing Maggie tell that story too.
That's fantastic. Well. Believe it or not, gents, we've gone 40 minutes already. It goes by so quick when you're talking Reds, and we're talking some awesome stories. We're looking forward to hopefully a sweep Tuesday night. And quickly before we go, Jason, if there's one team you want to see in the next series, I know we don't want to count our chickens. Who do you want to face?
Oh, that's a good question. We were talking about that off air earlier that with the guys that do the show with me. I think as a Reds fan, of course, you don't want to have to deal with the Cardinals because they've given us some trouble. In which I think that would be my answer, that I'd like to go with the Nationals because they're after watching especially tonight's game that I got to see a little bit of it, that they remind me a lot of the 2010 Reds. They're a good team. They may actually be a little bit better than the 2010 Reds because they had the best record in the National League. But they're just so inexperienced. They got such a bunch of young players that haven't been in postseason play, and I think that's going to come back to haunt them a little bit as the series wears on.
What about you, Dave?
See, I'm torn because I like the idea of not having to play the Cardinals anymore, but I also like the idea of having home field advantage. So
why the Reds haven't needed it?
Well, so I'm gonna say the Nationals just because I don't want to have to deal with the Cardinals anymore. But honestly, as long as we advance, I don't really care who's there.
Well, I would much rather them see the Nationals because they just don't have the experience. You don't want to face the Cardinals. You know what they're capable of. We saw it a year ago. This was a team that fought to the end to just get into the playoffs, and ended up going on a huge tear. I don't want to face the Cardinals. No, thank you. I would much rather play the Nationals, who have zero. What? The only guy on their team that has playoff experience I can think of is Jason Worth, maybe.
Jason Worth, yeah.
So there, I would much rather face the Nationals, and I would live with going on the road for 4 games in that series because, hey, the Reds have shown this year that they're one of the best road teams in baseball. So I'm not concerned about going to D.C. I would much rather face the Nationals. But, hey, we want to hear your thoughts on, again, we don't want to counter chickens because obviously crazier things have happened, but Reds are sitting pretty right now, up 2-0 against the Giants, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on the potential for future series. Email us at podcast@redlegfans.com. Jason Harbison of the Redlegs Radio Report. Hey, thanks again for joining us here on the podcast, and tell everybody out there how they can tune into your show.
Well, thanks so much, guys. We're on every Saturday morning from 9 to 10, which is Central Standard Time. We're on Central Time, so just kind of add an hour if you're up there in the Ohio area. And then you can listen to the show on ESPN1450.net. And we're also in Glasgow, Kentucky off of ESPN 1230. So we're mini syndicated. And actually, I think the next series, we're actually going to be in Elizabethtown as well. So we've kind of got like a mini syndication of the Kentucky area, which is, again, crazy to us that we're actually reaching basically the whole left half of Kentucky.
That's awesome. Well, again, thank you for joining us, and go Reds, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, David and Nick. I appreciate you guys.
And Dave, hey, I know it's been a couple weeks, but it was good catching up with you, and I'm looking forward to next week. Hopefully we're talking about another Reds win.
Sounds good. Yeah, it was good to catch up. Looking forward to tomorrow.
And that is going to wrap up episode. Let's make sure I've got the right outro because, again, I'm out of practice. It's been a very long time since we've done this. There we go. That's going to wrap up episode 28 of Redleg Weekly. Don't forget, you can email us at podcast@redlegfans.com and follow us on Twitter @RedlegWeekly. Redleg Weekly is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. For my co-host, Dave Brem, I'm Nick Sudling. We'll see you next time on Redleg Weekly.